St. Patrick's Day, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 17th. I don't know that... do they still have the St. Patrick's Day March in New York City? New York City is very Catholic. So is Boston, too. But they really make a big thing in some parts of the world of St. Patrick's Day. Tell you a little bit about him. Of course, we mustn't forget the... no, that was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, wasn't it? A completely different saint. My mind was wandering. I'm sorry. No, St. Patrick, all-round good guy. St. Patrick, 1432. No, I'm sorry, 432. That's the year. 432. St. Patrick, aged 16, is captured by Irish pirates. Irish pirates from his home in Great Britain and taken as a slave to Ireland. 461, St. Patrick, patron saint of Ireland, dies. 1756, St. Patrick Day is first celebrated in New York City at a little pub called the Crown and Thistle. We have a beautiful Irish pub down here in Norwood, corner Parade and Osmond Terrace, if ever you get to Adelaide, given that you're not watching me here in Adelaide now. It's called the Norwood Hotel, but it really is a celebration of everything Irish, and not just on St. Patrick's Day. Very nice place. 1961, Jaguar Head, William Lyons, brilliant man, wonderful guy. The debut of the first E-type Jaguar. And while this one over here is not the first, it is a beautiful example of the sexiest, in fact, Enzo Ferrari called it the most beautiful car in the world. And I think it probably can lay claim to that statement even today. So that's a 1967 E-type Jaguar. It has a bigger engine than the first series and a few other interesting little improvements, but it's still basically the same car that was launched on this day in 1961. Queen Elizabeth II opens the new London Bridge in 1973. I think an American came over and bought London Bridge, and he was most disappointed because when he unpacked it, they packed it all up, sent it to Arizona, I think it was. You can look it up. It's an interesting story. What he thought he bought was Tower Bridge. And when they put it all together, he said, damn, that's not it. Okay, fair enough. Capucine in 1990, French actress and a model. There are a few people in the world who have one name. I guess it must mean you have such celebrity that you just need one name. You know, there's Pink and there's Capucine. I suppose we've got to throw Ita in there too. People are instantly known by one name. Interesting. General Douglas MacArthur arrives in Australia to become Supreme Commander in 1942. The rubber band is patented on this day by Stephen Perry of London in 1845. General Motors acquires the German auto manufacturer Opel in 1929. I had no idea it was so far back. We've just been through the Oscars, the Golden Raspberry Awards, which, unlike the Oscars, this is the accolade for making the worst movie. They call them the Razzes, or the Razzies, as in raspberries, I think. The musical Cats wins 6 awards, including Worst Film, on this day in 2020. Rudolf Nureyev, the Russian ballet dancer and choreographer, born in Kiev, he was Born in the Soviet Union, when of course Ukraine was in the Soviet Union, and he dies AIDS, I think it was, Rudolf Nureyev. He was born this day in 1938. And I'll give you one more. You remember Rod Hull? Rod Hull was an entertainer here in Australia. You saw him on Hey Hey It's Saturday and various Tonight programs, and he popped up with his emu. He had an emu puppet, Rod Hull. Very clever guy, an Englishman, English comedian. And he dies on this day in 1999. He was only 63. He fell off his roof. And unfortunately, around the house can be very dangerous. Col Joy, he was cutting a tree in his backyard, and he sustained terrible, life-threatening injuries that affect him even today. And there was Molly Meldrum, who was trying to clean his gutters, I think, and fell off the ladder, and he has brain damage. Rod Hull died. Be careful, do not get up a ladder once you hit 50, I think. Pete, don't get up any ladders. Ah, dear. Gary Lineker. I hope I'm pronouncing that name properly, because I really am not all that familiar. A lot of the world, of course, is familiar with Gary, a former professional football player and sports broadcaster, a media career with the BBC, which is quite stellar. He presented their flagship football program, I think it was called Match of the Day, bigger probably back in the 1990s, but nevertheless, today, still the highest paid employee that the BBC have. Anyway, they suspended him, rehired him, reappointed him now, but they suspended him for criticising the British government for its treatment of asylum seekers. Now, if you're not familiar with the story, he likened the policy to that of the 1930s Germany, the Nazi Party. I honestly don't think people were trying desperately to get into Hitler's Germany in the 1930s, more like they were trying to get out, I would have thought. Anyway, this guy is not a political commentator, but nevertheless, I believe he's entitled to his opinion. He runs a football show, and for that he's paid more than anybody else on the BBC. Go figure. I don't understand it either. There are some people who think that it's okay to use celebrity to make a point, regardless of whether that celebrity makes your point relevant or irrelevant. I wouldn't have suspended him. I would have just asked him to explain just what he meant. What is the British government supposed to do when 46,000 people arrive on the doorstep in one day? Maybe he's a Labour supporter and he wants to just stick it up the Conservatives. It's perfectly okay to have an opinion, but you should be prepared to argue why you have that opinion. And the same thing goes, if you want another example of it, same thing goes for poor old Italy. Now, there are thousands of people dying, drowning every day, with people, mostly from Africa, trying to find a better place to live. And the refugees keep coming and they keep dying, and the people smugglers keep getting rich. What exactly do you do except somehow try to take the sugar off the table? Is there anything more hypocritical than the payroll tax? Is there anything more repulsive, inappropriate, nonsensical than the payroll tax and the poker machine tax? Poker machine tax. The government creates the problem and then makes a big thing of fixing it and a huge profit because of it. I'm talking about poker machine taxes here. The state governments can't live without that revenue. Poker machines, and increasingly more so, the online menace. Now, this is a major social problem which costs billions of dollars to deal with. And it's hard to get the exact figures, but if we just take New South Wales alone, it's estimated that people put $54 billion a year through those wretched things. Throughout Australia, they calculate about $95 billion is put through poker machines, mostly by people who can't afford to do it. Poker machines. Victor Dominello, a New South Wales Member of Parliament, has tried with his cashless credit card to do something. This is where you have to set an amount that you're prepared to lose before you start playing. And you're not putting money through the machine, you're putting credit through the machine. Now, these clubs are very, very powerful politically. Their lobby turned on the Gillard government and did that most effectively. So will we ever get rid of these evil things? Will they ever be banned? Removed? No. Nope. First, there is, of course, the tax revenue. Then there is the criminal elements, the alleged funding of terrorism, alleged money laundering. Then, of course, there's the gambling lobby. They talk about the gun lobby in America. These gambling guys here are far more effective, organised. Gambling, particularly poker machines, is a self-imposed social problem, or really social evil. Perfectly okay for every city to have a big, beautiful casino. Nothing wrong with it. But you don't have to turn every pub and club on every corner into a casino. That is antisocial. And who would vote for a government who would think that is a good idea? I have no doubt that the governments of Australia, when you look at it in the cold hard light of day, they are the real pokey addicts. But what are we going to do about it? I saw a documentary on children going to school hungry and charitable organisations coming to the school to feed them, the children. Now, I do not mean to be judgmental, but the truth is that the schools in this documentary were all set in the northern suburbs of Adelaide. The northern suburbs of Adelaide is where the poker machines are most numerous and most profitable. A coincidence? Are parents putting housekeeping money through poker machines when they should be going to the supermarket? The simple answer is yes. On the face of it, yes. And in the poorer socio-economic suburbs right across this country, the same thing is happening. Successive governments have turned a blind eye. Is it the gambling lobby? Or is it simply the revenue? We didn't have poker machines here for a long, long time. And I well remember I was on the air at 5DN at the time, and there was extensive lobbying to get them into the state. And the government of the day, the Liberal government of the day, never should have allowed it. Never. I was listening to some of this nonsense about nuclear-powered submarines, which of course will remain in the news for a while. It's almost as though, you know, intelligent people have a mental problem, not a mental advantage. A mental problem. Half their brain they devote to intelligent commentary, thinking, judgment. The other half is somewhere back in the Stone Age. There are intelligent people who have a Neanderthal understanding of nuclear energy. Nuclear energy, how evil it is. Frightening. It might surprise people to know that we have had a nuclear reactor here in Australia at Lucas Heights, which is a Sydney suburb, for 50 or 60 years. Did you know that, Pete?
No, I didn't. No.
Yep. 50 or 60 years. And it has never been controversial. For Australia, with so much uranium, it would have seemed like a no-brainer that we got involved in the nuclear age a long, long time ago. Think Professor Harry Messel. He was a world authority. I think Harry would be dead now, but in his day he was a world authority on the atom age. To turn our backs on this technology is like Saudi Arabia capping all the oil wells and going back to riding camels and living a Bedouin life in a tent. No, they are smart, the Saudis. They have embraced the modern world and the God-given resources that they have. And we are being pushed around by a whole lot of left-wing political numbskulls who, for some dark age reason, believe that atomic power is the root of all evil. Yet without nuclear medicine, where would we be? Where would we be without the sun? You know what the sun is? It's just a giant atomic reactor. It's what it is. It's clear we need honest, smart, informed leadership on this subject. Can you imagine the lefties think it's okay to export our coal and gas so others can use it, but we can't? We can't use it because it will contribute to global emissions. Global emissions. What do they think the people who are buying our coal and gas are doing with it? I'll tell you what they're doing with our coal and gas. They're using it. Hello? It's global emissions. It doesn't matter where they are used. It's so silly, isn't it? God, these people are stupid. Worse than stupid, they're dangerous. Dangerous. Andrew Bolt, if I've got time. You would have heard of Andrew Bolt through his column in the Herald Sun and his work on the Sky News channel. He's published this. Are we now compensating children for saving them from harm? He goes on, it's bizarre that we are compensating stolen generation survivors, but that is exactly what we are doing. We are compensating stolen generation survivors when courts haven't identified any child as being stolen from caring parents. Rescued, perhaps. The assumption, the accusation, is that they were taken just because they were Aboriginal. Wouldn't you think the courts would first establish that it was a bad thing to take those children in the first place? It could have been a life-saving, merciful, correct thing to do, a timely thing to do. After all, if you see children in danger, are the authorities supposed to just look the other way because they're black? That would be racist. White children should be rescued from danger. Black children should be rescued from danger. All people should be treated equally. This is my comment now, not Andrew's. All people should be treated equally. And according to the story, there is no evidence that any court has identified any member of the stolen generation as being anything but rescued, not stolen. I know the system is not perfect. I know that. I don't pretend it is. But courts should be trusted to ask the questions, assess the answers, judge the situation, protect the innocent, punish the guilty, dispense justice, particularly where children are involved, not just award money, compensation, when clearly there is no prima facie case for compensation. Should I wish everyone a happy weekend or do one more?
It's up to you.
It depends on whether we have enough on the page.
Keep going.
Is the battery okay? Not blinking at you or anything?
No.
I did want to talk to you about this scandal brewing around the Hillsong Church. I suspect it's just another way of people trying to get at Scott Morrison. He was a great promoter. No, not promoter. Advocate. No, I won't even say that. He was a member of the congregation. That's what he was. Hillsong, a phenomenally successful church. Now, I know nothing about that church, but as you know, if you've watched this program, I'm deeply suspicious of so-called charities and not-for-profits for their lack of transparency and accountability. But under parliamentary privilege, that church has had a bucket tipped on it. It's certainly been dragged into the spotlight. The claim is that tons of evidence has been put before the regulator, that's the Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, about which we hardly ever hear anything. And according to this, they have done absolutely nothing about the evidence they have been given or shown. I cannot comment on that, but as you know, I believe the entire charitable sector should be looked at. It is, after all, a $200 billion part of the Australian economy, tax-free, and it looks like it's completely unregulated, and that, in my book, is unacceptable. Thank you so much, and do have a very, very good weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Monday with the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordeux. Peter Clayton and I will be back. Believe in yourself, stay well.